Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu rasulullah. My name's Yusuf, but it hasn't always been Yusuf. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of things about me that are different now than they used to be a few years back. I started out as a Christian and a businessman some years ago with the idea to help people convert to Christianity. Was I ever surprised when I met my first Muslim? I'd like to share that story with you right now and let you think about it. Some years ago, my father came to me and he said, we're going to be doing business with a man from Egypt. Well, I thought that sounded pretty good, you know. The Nile River is very famous, the pyramids, Abu Hul, the Sphinx, and Cleopatra. I said, this is very romantic sounding. Then he said, we're going to be doing business with him, and he's a Muslim. I said, a what? A Muslim? Oh, man, everybody knows those Muslims are terrorists, hijackers, kidnappers. They don't believe in God. They worship a black box in the desert. And they kiss the ground 5 times a day. But my father said, no, I want you to meet this guy. He's really nice. I said, okay, but it has to be my way. He said, well, what way is that? I said, what I want to do, I want to come to this man directly from the church so that I'll have all this power with me, and I'll be wearing my cross. I have a nice big cross. I'll be wearing that. I'll have my Bible with me, and I'll even have my hat on that said, Jesus is Lord. And that's the way we'll meet this guy. And I was anticipating that I'm going to meet this man, and he's going to have a long robe on, and he's going to have this big cloak over him, and he's going to have a turban on his head, and he's going to have a huge beard, and his eyebrow is going to go all the way across like this. In fact, I thought I was going to be meeting somebody like Ayatollah Khomeini or something. But when I saw the man, I was surprised, because he wasn't wearing all these clothes like I had thought. He didn't have a turban. He didn't even have a beard. As a matter of fact, he didn't have any hair at all. He was bald. And I was amazed, too, at his personality. He was quiet, shy, very kind. Didn't look like a terrorist. I thought about it. I said, well, let's just check it out. So I asked him, I said, do you Muslims believe in God? He said, yes. Yeah, but do you believe in the one God, the God of Abraham? He said, yes. I said, yeah, but you don't believe in Moses, do you? He said, yes. 10 Commandments? He said, yes. Yeah, but you don't believe in the New Testament? He said, yes. Yeah, but do you believe in Jesus? You don't believe in the precious name of Jesus? He said, yes. Do you believe he's the Messiah? He said, yes. He said, we even believe Jesus is with God now, and he'll be back in the last day. I said, really? This guy's going to be easier than I thought. And things began to really change for us. I asked my dad, let's bring him to our house. Let him live in the house with us. And that way we can give him a lot more of this propagation. We can get him to think about becoming a Christian. My dad said, leave him alone. He's happy with his religion. I said, no, I have to change him. And that's what I set out to do. I contacted a friend of mine that used to take a big cross. He was also a preacher, and he took this huge wooden cross, about 16 feet long, and he would drag this cross up on his shoulder and walk like the pictures you see, like Jesus is walking with a cross, and he'd be walking down the street with this cross, people stopping him, asking him what's going on, and he'd give out the little Bibles and talk to them about Jesus. So I went to him and I said, you know, I'm trying to convert a Muslim to come to Christianity. The first thing he said is, stay away from them. I said, why? He said, they are the devil. They're the shaitan. Stay away from those guys. I said, no. Take it easy. I know what I'm doing. And then the man with the cross, he had a heart attack. And he had to go to the hospital. So I would go to visit him. And we would talk about religion, about the Bible, and how to convert Muslims to come to Christian. One day there was a man in the room with him in a wheelchair. And I took my Bible and I started reading to this man and telling him all about the Lord. And the man told me, just like, get away from me. One day, as I was reading the Bible to the man, he apologized. He said, I'm sorry I was rude to you. He said, but you don't know the problems that I've had. He said, I want to confess something to you. I said, confess to me? I'm not a priest, I'm a preacher. You can't confess to me. You're probably a Catholic, aren't you? He said, yes, I am, and I know you're not a priest because I am a priest. And I thought, he's a priest? So we became friends. And when he got out of the hospital, I asked the priest, the Catholic priest, to come and live in our house with us. Well, he was getting better because I was thinking, okay, my father is a minister and I'm a preacher, and we bring a priest. We've got all these different aspects of Christianity. We are sure to catch this Muslim. Positive. And that was my plan. But Allah, of course, had a bigger plan. What happened next, you might be surprised. We sat around the table one night, cleared everything off after we were through eating, and I decided, let's bring our Bibles and let's talk to this man, this poor Muslim here. We'll talk to him about the Bible. So we did. My father brought his Bible, the Bible which is called King James Version. My wife brought her Bible, which is called Good News for Modern Man. It's written by Jimmy Swaggart. Then I have my Bible, the Revised Standard Version of the Bible, and the priest had his Bible, and that Bible has 73 books, and my father's Bible has 76 books in it, and the Orthodox Bible has 78 books in it, and none of them are exactly alike. So we began arguing about the Bible. No, the Bible said this. No, it doesn't say that. No, it doesn't. It says this, arguing back and forth about the Bible. And all the time, the Muslim, he's sitting there like this. So we ask him, hey, Muhammad, how many versions of that Quran? Your book's called the Quran, isn't it? He said, yeah. How many versions do you have of the Quran? He said, one. Only one. And it's in the Arabic language. And it's never been changed. And there are no versions. There's just one. I said, wait a minute. What about the English? He said, English wasn't even there at the time of the Quran or the Bible. So English just helps you to understand, but it isn't the Quran unless it's in the original language. And likewise, your Bible's not the original if it's not in the original language. Let's change the subject. I'll leave that alone. A few nights later, we tried something else, cleared off the table again, sit there again, said, okay, let's talk about belief. I said, you know, Muhammad, we believe God is one, just like you Muslims do. He said, yeah. Then he asked me, he said, can you explain to me this thing about the Trinity? Trinity. Is it in the Bible? Well, the word Trinity is not really in the Bible, but let me talk about the Trinity. Let me show you what's the Trinity. It's one God, but it's three aspects of God. He said, what does that mean? I said, well, you know, like an apple. If you have an apple, the outside of the apple is red. Inside the apple, it's white. And inside of that, there are seeds. Those are three separate things, but still it's only one apple. He said, how many seeds are there? I said, well, there could be 5 or 12. He said, does that change the nature of the apple? I went, He said, what if it has a worm in the apple? I said, no, let's don't talk about the apple anymore. So I went back to my friend with the big cross, and I said, you know, we're having some problem explaining Trinity to this Muslim. He said, I told you, stay away from those Muslims. They got demons. They are shaitan, man. Don't talk to them. I said, yeah, but I feel so close. He's so nice. He's so kind. And he's so religious. He prays 5 times a day. Man, if we get him as a Christian, he'll only have to pray once a week. It might. He said, listen, you should have used the egg. Talk about the egg. I said, yeah, the egg. That works. So the next time we were sitting together with him, I said, okay, Muhammad, I want to explain again. The Trinity is like an egg. He said, God is like an egg? I said, no. The Trinity is like the egg. There's the egg, which has the white on the outside, the shell. Inside the shell, you have the white. Inside that, you have the yellow. 3 things, 1 egg. He said, what if it's a double yolk? You have 2 yellows. He said, what if the egg is rotten? I didn't change the subject. Another preacher told me, you should have told them about the family of God. I said, what's that? He said, okay, I'm one man, yeah? Yeah. My wife, she's one lady. That's true. And my kid is one. So it's 1, 1, 1. it's the family of God. I said, yeah, that works. Let's try that. But as soon as you do that, guess what happened? They say, what if you have another child? Now you got 4. And what if one of them dies? Can God die? No. And what if they get a divorce? Talaq. That's a problem. Because in Texas, if you get a divorce, the wife gets the house, the wife gets the car, the wife gets the pension plan, the wife gets your savings account, the wife gets your computer, and she even gets all of your email too. So that doesn't work. So, well, So I said, no, wait a minute, Muhammad, what do you say about God? What's your Quran tell you about God? And he said to us, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. He said, what does that mean? He said, say, it's talking to Muhammad, and this is what Allah is telling Muhammad to say. Say to the people when they ask you about Allah, He is Allah, the unique. He is always and eternally sought after by His creation, but He doesn't need the creation. And He's not the father of anything. He's not the son of anybody. And there isn't anything like Him anywhere, anytime, any place. He is Ahad. And Ahad in Arabic means one, but it's the kind of one, there's no two going to come after it. So He's uniquely one. And I was thinking, that's what I really believe. Now, just about this same time, my friend, the Catholic priest that had been living with us, asked our Muslim friend, he said, can I go to your church with you? May I go to your mosque or whatever you call it? We'd like to go with you, see what it looks like. So he said, sure, come on. And they went to the mosque. And when they went to the mosque, they stayed for a while, watched the people come and pray and leave. And then he came home and we took him aside. We said, hey, tell us, what do they do? Do they like slaughter animals in there? Do they make bombs in there? Exactly what are these guys doing in that mosque? He said, no, not like this. He said, I watched them. They came and all the men, they lined up real nice and they stood there and they were quiet and they bent over like this, like bowing, like in the Bible it says to bow down before the Lord. They were bowing like the same way in the Bible. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, and then they put their heads down on the ground. You know how? Like it said in the Bible, they fell on their face. He said, some priests still do this today just like he did. I said, really? He said, yes. I said, and then what? He said, they left. I said, no, wait a minute. What kind of music did they have? He said, they didn't have any music. No music? No music? How are you going to worship God without any music? He said, nope, they didn't need any music. Now I was really puzzled because I'm thinking, I'm a music minister, that's what I do. In fact, one of our companies is Estes pianos, Estes organs, Estes guitars, and we make a lot of money selling all these musical instruments. And then I was thinking, wait a minute, maybe if I went in Islam, I could get these guys to buy musical instruments for all their mosque, I could get rich. But he said, no. The Muslims would not accept to put music in their worship. That would never happen. I said, It was only 1 week later, the Catholic priest asked him, can I go again with you? We said, why do you want to go again? He said, I feel peace. When I go in there, I feel so close to God. It's so nice. He went back again. Only this time, he didn't come back. It became very late. We were worried about them. Finally, when they came, I looked out the window and I saw my friend, the Muslim, getting out of the car. And then the other door opened up and a man got out. I said, is that Pete? Is that Father Peter Jacobs? Because he was wearing a long white thobe or robe, and he had on one of these white caps like this. I said, Pete, did you become a Muslim? He said, Ashhadu la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah. I was shocked. A priest became a Muslim. A priest became a Muslim. I set up our cameras. We used to have a TV show called Estes Music Jamboree. I set up the cameras, I set up the lights, I set up the microphones. I was going to interview him. I got it all set up, but it took a long time. By the time I got it set up, he fell asleep. I said, oh, well, try again tomorrow. In the meantime, I started going upstairs to my part of the house with my wife, and I was telling her, look, a priest just became a Muslim. Can you imagine this? You know, we know him, and we watched him, and how did he become a Muslim? And I was really trying to see what she might say, because I was thinking, you know, I believe what Muslims believe. I don't think Jesus is really God or son of a God. The prophet, the miracle of God, yes. Prophet of God, yeah. Messenger of God, that works. But how is Jesus God? That doesn't make sense. So the more I thought about it, I said, well, maybe, you know, maybe Muhammad, the prophet, was for real. But I'd like to see what does she say about this before I open my mouth too much, you know. So I was telling her about the priest. Then all of a sudden she said, I want a divorce. I said, what? What's this all about? She said, talaq, which Arabic, you know. She's saying divorce. I said, oh, God. Why? She said, because a Muslim can't be married to a Christian. I said, whoa, wait a minute. I did not say I want to be a Muslim. In fact, I will tell you, no, I do not want to be a Muslim. Don't worry about it. We don't have to talk about divorce. I'm not gonna be a Muslim. Don't worry. Besides, he said, our friend Muhammad told us that it's a Muslim woman that can't be married to a Christian man. But if I want to be a Muslim, you can still be a Christian. There'd be no problem. It's the Muslim woman that can't be married to the Christian man. She said, that's exactly what I'm telling you. I want to be a Muslim, and I can't be married to a Christian. I didn't see that coming. I was shocked. Then it hit me. I said, well, no, hold on. Good news. The good news is I too wish to be a Muslim. I will be a Muslim as well. And then she said, you're a liar. I said, what? She said, you're lying. I said, how? She said, you're lying right now, and you don't want to be a Muslim. I said, no, I do. She said, then you were lying before when you said you didn't want to be a Muslim. Either way, you're a liar. Get out. Okay. She's right. So I started going out the door. I went down the steps, and I stopped. And I said, wait a minute. Where am I going? This is my father's house. How did I just get kicked out? Let me do something here. I went and got my friend Muhammad, the Muslim from Egypt. Woke him up. I said, come outside. You got to talk to me. And we walked and we talked that whole night. In fact, we walked and I talked. And I talked about this thing and that thing. And what about the people in the church? What about the music? What about, you know, how will I dress? What will I do? What will happen to my life if I be a Muslim? Oh, my God, what will happen? And finally, just about the time for Fajr, he looked at me and he said, you know what? This subject is not between you and me anymore. And this subject is not between you and your father anymore. And it's not the subject between you and your wife anymore. The subject is between you and your Lord. So there's nothing else I can do. You already know what to do. Go talk to your Lord. I thought about it. I said, he's right. So when he went to pray his Fajr, I went off behind my father's house and found a secure place. And I put my head down on the ground, the same direction that I had seen my friend pray to, called Mecca or Qibla, you know. I said, let me try that. Put my head on the ground, and with my head on the ground, I said these words, oh God, guide me. Guide me. And when I raised up my head, I could feel inside of me what I'd known all my life was true. There really is only one God. And you have to do what he wants you to do, not what you want. I said, I have to be a Muslim. That's what Muslim means. Muslim means do what God wants you to do. But what will the people say? What will my father say? What about my work? No, there's no choice. I have to do this. I have to. He's right. It's between me and the Lord. That's what I have to do. So I went in the house. I went upstairs. I made a full shower. I came down and I told the Muslim and I told the priest, who is now a Muslim, guys, I need to be a Muslim. I need to accept La ilaha illallah. No God to worship except Allah. Wa Muhammad Rasulullah. And Muhammad's his messenger, because he's carrying the same message that all the prophets carried. It was pretty easy to do that shahada. As a matter of fact, it felt pretty good. Every time I help somebody enter Islam now, I remember that, and I remember that same feeling. And it's one of the most invigorating, the most powerful sensations that come over you, and you can't help but cry because you feel it. This is the truth. This is the real truth. This is the only truth. There really is God, and he's one. And while I was still standing there, my wife came down, and she had a scarf on her head, and she said, I want to be a Muslim too. And she entered Islam. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. A few months later, my father also entered into Islam. Since then, he's passed away, so we say, mercy on him, rahimahullah. But how could you imagine that a whole family and their friends could meet one person, a geologist from Cairo, Egypt, and they all become Muslim? And they're trying to make him a Christian. It's quite a story. It's a true story. And since then, I've seen other priests, ministers, preachers, elders, fathers. Even I've met the bishops who have come to Islam. One archbishop from the Orthodox Church. This is something that if you think about it, it's not rational. Except for what? Unless it must be the truth. I highly encourage you and everybody listening to my voice to examine the truth in yourself. Look in yourself and see if it isn't exactly right. There's only one God. One. And Muhammad's his messenger. Check it out on the internet. We've got websites about this same subject. If you have the opportunity, go to shareislam.com and see for yourself other priests, ministers, and preachers that enter Islam. I'll be looking for you on the internet. Till then, peace. May Allah guide you. Wassalamu alaikum.